I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, you are muted.
That's kind of an auspicious beginning, isn't it? I call this meeting to order. Welcome to meeting number 7 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Human Resources, Skills and Social Development and the Status of Persons with Disabilities. Pursuant to the orders of reference of March 24th, April 11th, and April 2020, the committee is meeting for the purpose of receiving evidence concerning matters related to the government's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Today's meeting is taking place by video conference, and the proceedings will be made available via the House of Commons website. The webcast will always show the person speaking rather than the entirety of the committee. In order to facilitate the work of our interpreters and ensure an orderly meeting, I would like to outline a few rules to follow. Interpretation in this video conference will work very much like a regular committee meeting. You have the choice at the bottom of the screen of either Floor, English, or French. In order to resolve sound issues, please ensure that you are on the English channel when speaking in English and on the French channel when speaking in French. If you plan to alternate from one language to the other, please also switch the interpretation channel so it aligns with the language you are speaking. We encountered some difficulty primarily with the witnesses on this point yesterday, so if the witnesses could take note of that, if your remarks will have you switching back and forth, if you can also switch back and forth the language toggle. Before speaking, please wait until I recognize you by name. When you are ready to speak, please click on the microphone icon to activate your mic. A reminder that all comments by members and witnesses should be addressed through the chair. Should members need to request the floor outside of their designated time for questions, they should activate their mic and state that they have a point of order. And if I could just emphasize that, I would ask that you activate your mic to raise a point of order as opposed to raising your hand. The purpose of the raise hand function is when there is an active point of order under discussion that a speaker's list is formed to speak to that same point of order. But the point of order itself should be raised by unmuting your mic, an ongoing discussion through the raise hand feature. When speaking, please speak slowly and clearly. When you are not speaking, your mic should be on mute. The use of headsets, as you have heard, is strongly encouraged. If you have a microphone on your headset that hangs down, please make sure it is not rubbing on your shirt during your questioning time. At the end of yesterday's meeting, we had an exchange where I wrongly ruled against a point of order raised by Mr. Albus. I have since consulted with the clerk and I can now assure the committee members that that will not be repeated. Every member has the right to determine which witness answers their question. Only witnesses get to answer questions, and it's the witness that's identified by the member. That is not what happened yesterday, and that was through my error. I have apologized to Ms. Kwan and Mr. Albus for that, and I now do so publicly. Should any technical challenges arise, for example, in relation to the interpretation, or if you are accidentally disconnected, please advise the chair or the clerk immediately, and the technical team will work to resolve them. Please note that we may need to suspend during these times as we need to ensure all members are able to participate fully. All right, before we get started, can everyone click on their screen in the top right-hand corner and ensure that they're on gallery view? With this view, you'll be able to see all the participants in a grid view, and it will ensure that all video participants can see one another. And Mr. Vaughn, did you have a point of order before I introduce the witness?
I just wanted to say that I would put the chair in that position, and it was my assumption that as it was in the previous term when parliamentary secretaries could provide input, the same thing was allowed for here, and I apologize for putting both the chair and also the members on the committee in an awkward position. So I apologize to Jenny Kwan as well as to the committee and the chair.
Resign. Thank you, Mr. Vaughn. I would now like to thank the witnesses for joining us today. We have from the Department of Employment and Social Development, Chantal Mayhew, Deputy Minister, Labour, Anthony Giles, Assistant Deputy Minister, and Gary Robertson, Assistant Deputy Minister. I understand that Ms. Mayhew has some opening remarks. You have 10 minutes. Please proceed.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, it's the clerk here. We lost Madame Maher connection. We're trying to reestablish her right now.
Technology is great when it works.
Okay, it seems that Madame Maher is here now.
Madame Mayhew, you have
Yes.
you have the floor.
Okay, thank you. And I'm very sorry that I dropped the line and I've called back from my cell, so I apologize for that. I'm not too sure if you turn to my colleagues who are on the line for some comments or not. I'm sorry because I just kind of joined at this moment.
You have 10 minutes to use as you wish.
All right,
and no one has opened yet. We've left it to you unless you wish to proceed otherwise.
No, that's great. And thank you very much. Thank you to you and thank you to members for inviting us. I won't use the 10 minutes. I just want to say a few words. So I'm Deputy Minister for the Labour Program and accompanied by Tony Giles, who's the ADM responsible for policy, dispute resolution and international affairs, and Gary Robertson, who's the ADM responsible for compliance, operation, and development. We're here for the Labour Program, and as you know, we're part of the ESDC portfolio. And it is enforce and set policy. So that relates to legislation and regulations that relate to occupation and health safety, and that includes transportation like railways, airlines, airports.
Point of order.
Chair. Point of order. Yeah.
Yes. Who raised the point of order?
Kate Young.
Okay, Kate. Go ahead.
I'm just really having a hard time hearing Chantal. I don't know, it keeps cutting out. I'm not sure if it's just for me. Thank you.
It is for me as well, and I see some hands waving on the screen. Ms. Mayhew, I hopefully will be able to get some technical assistance in there for you because I think we're all having trouble hearing you.
I'm sorry with that. So I'm holding the mic closer to my mouth now. Does that make a difference? Can you nod or tell me it doesn't? Or
that does seem better.
Thank you very much. And I will speak more slowly. And if there's something, please interrupt me again. So I was just saying that the regulatory, federally regulated sector is kind of limited to a few major industries for the Canadian economy. I was talking about provincial and international transportation, banking system, telecoms, and for some respect, the federal public service. And so it's important because it provides an indication of where we actually have an impact and we have a role to play. And for the rest of the economy, the provinces and the territories will exercise their jurisdiction. The last thing I want to note is that I'm aware that my colleagues, Graham Plack, the Deputy Minister of ESDC, and Laurie McDonald, who's the Chief Operating Officer from Service, were there yesterday and the week before to answer some more broader ESDC questions related to their mandate. And so I'm pleased to be here today with my two colleagues to answer questions related to the labor program. And I'll pause there. And I hope that the sound was better.
Yes, it was better once we restarted. Thank you very much, Ms. Mayhew. We'll now begin with rounds of questions, starting with the Conservatives. Tamara Jansen for 6 minutes. Ms. Jansen.
Sorry, my apologies. Had to unmute myself. Okay, so I guess I want to start with how in the early stages of this pandemic, your government introduced support for small business owners in the form of a 10% wage subsidy. And because of accountability in the House of Commons and the work of the opposition parties and stakeholders across Canada, your government introduced a 75% wage subsidy. Can you please explain the decision-making process that led your government to pause that a 10% wage subsidy would be enough to support small and medium business enterprises?
So I'm not sure if I'm redirecting the question, but thank you to the President and member for the question. I will have to say that questions around the wage subsidies don't pertain to the labor program, and I'll hold my mic, don't pertain to the mandate. The wage subsidy program is something that the Department of Finance worked with, the same way that for the assistance for workers, it was an ESDC initiative. And so I'm not privy to the decision-making process that led to the decision to increase the amount.
Okay. And let's see. Over 10 million Canadians have applied for CERB. And to put this into perspective, Canada's total workforce is around 19 million Canadians. So the unfortunate reality is many businesses will not be able to reopen when this is over. Many struggle to retain all their employees. What's the plan for the recovery of Canada's labor force after this pandemic?
Thank you again for the question. And I'm sorry because I will have to point out to, again, my colleagues at ESDC and the Department of Finance and the Department of Innovation and Science and economic development in terms of the recovery of the economy and the plan for reopening. What I can say is that in our responsibility for protecting the occupational health and safety of workers, or ensuring that it is kind of that employers and employees address those risks, like we are thinking about the recovery and how to best support employers doing that. But our mandate very much is limited in this case to occupational health and safety in the workplace.
Okay, well then a question in regards to PPE. I know that there's been a tremendous shortage on PPE, and it seems like the national stockpile is fairly low and not able to help out. How are we going to ensure the safety of employees as we do open if there's no ability to get any PPE to them?
So I'll refer this question to Gary Robertson, but let me say a few words on this. So as you know, the procurement of PPE is something that has been managed first for the healthcare system. Our colleagues in the Department of Foreign Service can manage procurement there. I hope I'm clear enough. No.
Could you repeat that? Sorry, I couldn't understand.
Sure. So I'll step back again. So the first priority in terms of PPE was with the healthcare system.
Sorry, I still can't quite understand.
Is this better that way?
Hopefully.
Yeah, Chair,
Okay.
Chair, point of order. I don't think it's a mic thing. I think it's a connection thing. There's clearly a poor connection there.
Like I tried to network. My apologies.
Is there anybody else that's using your network maybe right now?
Okay, so I'll do place learn.
May I suggest that we suspend for 5 minutes and perhaps see if the IT folks can connect with Ms. Mayhew to try and resolve this. if I can just hear from the IT folks whether there's value in suspending for that purpose. I don't want to suspend unnecessarily, but if it's going to make the meeting more productive, I do.
We are looking into it right now. 5 minutes may be actually, a suspension may be warranted in this case.
Okay, we're suspended them for 5 minutes. Thank you for your help.
Je vais quitter la...
order. Ms. Jansen is at the 4-minute mark of her 6 minutes of questions. Ms. Jansen, over to you.
Okay, so I'm hoping to get an answer in regards to PPE. If we would like to start opening back up again, how are we going to ensure that we have sufficient PPE? Because we haven't had from the very beginning. I've been on the health committee, and it appears that the stockpile was not stockpiled. So I wonder what's the plan to ensure that Canadians across Canada are going to have PPE when they go back to work?
So thank you, and I hope you can hear me right now or better. Thank you. And so I'll turn to my colleague Gary Robertson in a second, but what I'll say just more generally is that the demand for PPE, the priority has been assigned for healthcare workers. The public health agencies are working with the provincial and territorial counterparts to identify the needs in the healthcare system and working with Procurement Canada to procure for that group. We're very much aware that other employers also need PPE, but they also have ways of mitigating the risk that don't necessarily need PPE because not every employee is exposed to the same level of risk. And maybe what I'll do is I'll turn now to Mr. Robertson.
Actually, just what you mentioned there makes me think about the seniors care home down the road from me. They actually disallowed Fraser Healthcare workers from coming in because Fraser Health only assigned them 2 masks and 2 sets of gloves for a month of working in the facilities. How on earth are we going to fix a problem like that? What role do you play in that?
So let me turn right now to Mr. Robertson to speak about our role in PPE and overseeing that. And so maybe I'll turn to Gary now.
Thank you. So maybe I'll just step back a minute to give a broader context and then answer your question very directly. So we're responsible for regulating the federal entities. And so that's roughly in the occupational health and safety domain, 8% of the Canadian workforce. And it includes, as Chantal said in her opening remarks, some of the larger employers that you'd be aware of, rail, air, etc. It does not include some of the other activities that are provincially regulated, like long-term care facilities or hospitals, for example. Having said that, within the federal domain, our occupational health and safety approach is based on a concept called the internal responsibility system. And this is very key, and it's consistent with the other jurisdictions' approaches as well, where no one knows the workplace better than the folks that work in it. And that includes both the employers, as you would expect, but also the employees.
So I'm not exactly sure how then you would ensure that those workers that are going into a care facility where we know 80% of the deaths are happening would have sufficient PPE. Like, what role could you play perhaps in the future? How can you ensure that that's happening?
Yeah, sorry, Ms. Jansen, that's your time. Over to Mr. Turnbull for 6 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thanks officials for joining today. Really appreciated the opening remarks, and I'm sure you're all working as hard as the rest of us to deal with the many concerns that are out there. I know the importance of workplace safety and health at this time, and I think it's there's many federally regulated workplaces that I think the labor program is responsible for. In normal circumstances, ensuring that there's the Canadian workers' rights are protected to a safe work environment. And I know that these are not normal times at all. I mean, this is a real unique moment in history, one that we've never experienced before. Can you clarify what the labor program has done to address the concerns that have arisen from the COVID-19 pandemic for us?
So thank you very much for the question. I'll say a few things because just to kind of give a context, when in late 2019 and early 2020s, we start hearing of cases in China of COVID-19, we were kind of alerted that something might be going on and went back to our plans for different epidemics. Like, as you know, we've learned from SARS and H1N1 earlier. And so as the risks seem to grow and the risk of pandemic seem to grow, we started taking steps to prepare for what it could mean for the labor program and what it could mean for the federally regulated industry. I will turn again to Gary to go over what we've done at that point. And so if Gary's there, I will just turn to him now.
I am. So what I would like to share with the committee is that while our operational posture did pivot, our procedures remain the same because we've got a very good approach to dealing with all types of risk, including biological risks. So some of the operational posture changes that we made, including suspending in-person proactive activities, does not suggest that we don't do proactive work, but we ourselves could be a biological risk or a vector for an organization. So our interest was into restricting movement so that we didn't actually cause organizations that we were inspecting problems. We also, in early March, suspended without special reasons visits to vulnerable communities. So that would include Indigenous communities, because we were similarly concerned that we would spread or could spread COVID-19 through our interactions with those communities. But having said that, we have focused very significant effort on our posture, specifically as it relates to complaints and, as you would expect, refusal to work complaints. And we work very closely with our colleagues at Transport Canada and the Canada Energy Regulator because they have occupational health and safety responsibilities as well. For Transport Canada, it's for onboard activities in the marine and the aviation and the rail sectors, and for CER, as you would expect, as it relates to pipelines. So we also then obviously worked with stakeholders to make sure that they were reminded of their responsibilities around the hazard prevention program and updating those plans. And so I think with some of that good work that was done, more folks were better prepared than they otherwise would have been.
So that's great. Thank you for the answer. And I'll ask some follow-up questions about federal sector employers and just how well are they really adapting their response to the health and safety concerns of the workers? And do you think that appropriate measures are being put in place? Can you give me an overview of that?
Yeah, well, I think that like every enterprise is at the beginning, people were not totally sure what to do, but what we found is that our employer have stepped up really quickly to address the risk of COVID-19. As you can imagine, like the federally regulated sector involves international transportation. International transportation, it was one of the vector of the crisis. And so airlines and the ports were places where people started worrying about this the soonest and started taking action. And at that time, some of the guidance was still evolving. And so we really have seen them stepped up. What we've seen too is that the employees themselves and the unions have raised concern, and we've seen a lot of very constructive discussion where employees and employers get together and say, we're not so sure what to do in this case. We used to do it that way. I'm very close to my coworker. Are there different ways of doing it? And we've seen everyone trying to find solutions that are very practical because each workplace will be different in terms of what they are doing. And so they have stepped up. Like people have adapted, and we see, but in some case, teleworking, that has also been a way of reducing risk, that they've adopted that. And so that in a way, the federally regulated sector is one of those that, because it's so critical, has maintained operation throughout the crisis, unlike others. And so they will be impacted by some of the reopening, but they have maintained most of their operation. So I don't know, Gary, if you want to add to this.
Yeah, I would actually just add one thing that I think committee members would be assured of, is that in the labor program, we enjoy a tripartite approach to managing issues. So that means on any given issue, we involve all stakeholders, government stakeholders, as well as both employer and employee reps. So folks are generally better informed than they otherwise might be. And folks are better positioned then to identify the risks and to mitigate them. And that relationship has been preserved right from the junior analyst level right up to meetings that the minister has had with stakeholders. So we're monitoring the situation. And as the deputies indicated, there has been an awful lot of work done to make sure that things are being managed as safely as possible.
Thank you, Mr. Robertson. Thank you, Mr. Turnbull. Suite, nous avons Madame Chabot pour.
We now move to Ms. Chabot for 6 minutes. Go ahead, please. Madame Chabot, you have the floor. Thank you. Thank you for your presentations. Is the sound good enough? It seems to be thus far. Listen, on this International Workers' Day, the fact that we're hearing the Department of Employment and Social Development, well, it's a good time to underscore the fact that we're hearing about everything that had to be done, that is being done in this unprecedented crisis. But we should never lose sight of the fact, I'm not saying you are, but we mustn't lose sight of the fact that we're talking about 8 million workers cross-country who have found themselves in a most difficult situation. With regard to the federal government's jurisdiction, you talked about health and safety. There are also all of the issues of psychological health in the workplace as well. Here in Quebec, the economy is going to restart shortly. The Commission des normes d'équité de santé du travail has put out guidelines to accompany retail and other businesses. But my question would be the following. It's one that is put to you often, that's put to the Department Services Canada, shut down all of its offices, all of its centers. People are complaining about this. Everywhere there are federal employees who need services, and the rules with regard to health and safety in the workplace, well, they have to be adapted. Our office is going to reopen with appropriate mechanisms for a safe return to work. Thank you very much for the question. Two things. First of all, the management of Services Canada offices, well, that comes under my colleague's responsibility. Is the connection good? Yes, thank you. It's Laurie McDonald, my colleague, who's responsible for this. She's in charge of Service Canada operations. Nevertheless, I would like to answer your question with regard to the resources that we have available to businesses at present in this crisis situation with regard to health and safety. Even if our operations are virtual at present, we have 24/7 phone access available. We're in contact with those companies who require our services virtually. We're there for them, and we are able to respond to their requests.
Our COVID, where the translation and the original audio is, they're going both at the same time. So I'm just wondering if it's possible to bring the original audio down and the translation up a bit. Thank you, Mr. Doherty. Madame Mayhew, peut-être
Ms. Maheu?
Problem is that when you are switching languages, you aren't switching the toggle to indicate that. That is something that we have encountered in the past. Is that a reasonable guess?
Est-ce que c'est mieux comme ça?
Is this better? I'm on the French channel now. Is this better? Is the sound improved?
One, Mr. Doherty, is that okay? Okay, Mr. Doherty's good. Allez-y.
Point of order, Chair. Point of order.
Yes, Mr. Dong.
I don't get the English interpretation, and I checked on my language bar. I did switch to English, so I don't know if it's just me or is the rest of the committee hearing English interpretation fine?
Okay, Monsieur Dong, est-ce que ça marche?
Is it working now? Is it coming through? Is it coming through for you, Mr. Dong?
Headset. I'm not sure about that. can we perhaps hear from the IT folks as to what the nature of that might be? Or would that be the interpretation department?
We are looking into it right now.
Okay.
I wonder if I could make a point of order as well.
Yeah, who's this?
Tamara Jansen.
Please, Ms. Jansen, go ahead.
I noticed, especially on my time, but again, it's going to happen here, that when you have all these technical difficulties, you actually make it quite ineffective to ask questions. And so I was given exactly 6 minutes, but most of that was, having to repeat things, dealing with, challenges with connectivity and so forth. I think it's really important that, if we want to actually take this seriously, we ensure that people get 6 minutes of productive time. And that's what I'm hoping you can do somehow.
Thank you, Ms. Jansen. In actual fact, you got 7 minutes, not including the interruptions to make up for what happened to you. And I'm trying to exercise my discretion to achieve the precise goal that you've mentioned.
Again, to reiterate, it's very unproductive time when most of it was spent with a lot of connectivity issues. So it is a challenge. I get that we're trying to work with the technology that we have at hand, but it would be great to have, a better discussion that actually gets something done.
Thank you. Back to the IT folks. Do we have Mr. Dong's problem resolved?
On a point of order, Mr. Chairman, yes, Madam Chabot, go ahead. Yes, it was my speaking time. I was waiting for answers. We started responding, and then there were points of order raised. I hadn't finished my intervention. I just want to ensure that I will have all of the 6 minutes time promised me. Yes, that will be the case. Thank you.
Mr. Dong, you're back in business?
No, Chair, I'm still not getting the translation. I got a little bit and then it got cut off, but I don't know what it is. We can keep going. If that's becoming a problem, I'll raise my hand again.
Okay. Madame Chabot, il vous reste.
Madame Chabot, you have 3 minutes left. Go ahead, please. Yes. Secondly, I wanted to discuss a specific problem that I've encountered, or rather that thousands of workers throughout the country have encountered. And these are the pension funds of workers working in private businesses and elsewhere. The interpreter apologizes, but the sound is cutting out, and now we've lost Ms. Chabot. We're talking about stories we've heard via the media with regard to issues encountered by workers. Can we have assurances from you that you're working at your end of things to ensure? Apologies from the interpreter, we've lost the sound.
Order.
As nice as it is to see each other's faces, it seems that the computer line that's connecting is the problem. Maybe if they tried, we wouldn't be able to see the official's face, but maybe a landline might provide a more stable audio feed, and that would help the meeting move faster.
The other thing I'd recommend is that anybody that is online is turn off all your Wi-Fi on your other additional devices so that it's not drawing down the bandwidth around you.
Perhaps we could bring in the IT ambassador on this point.
Mr. Doherty does have a very good point about bringing down any use of the bandwidth if you're on a wireless device. We've suggested at all times a wired connection will always be better. Computer to internet as well as headset to computer. Another thing that will bring down the bandwidth consumption is turning off your video. That way your entire signal is going to audio only.
Okay, so there's some advice for everyone to try to keep this moving. Madame Chabot, vous avez...
Ms. Chabot, you still have your 3 minutes remaining. When you restarted, the sound wasn't good, so please resume. Yes, with regard to the pension funds for workers throughout the country, given the economic crisis we will be experiencing, do you plan on protecting the pension funds for retirees? I'm hoping that your answer will be yes. Thank you for the question. I would answer by saying that the protection of pension funds doesn't fall within the mandate of our department. These are responsibilities that oftentimes fall to the provinces. The federal government is responsible in cases of bankruptcies. So apologies, but it doesn't fall under our labor program nor our mandate. But it does fall under you when we're dealing with bankruptcies. In the cases of bankruptcies, we have a program that can compensate businesses whose employees didn't receive their salaries or their end of employment payments that they might have been eligible for. But there's no protection for pension funds. Gary might be able to provide more advice with regard to that program. Yes, you're right. I think a bill was tabled. In cases of bankruptcies, pension funds must be the priority before the businesses closes. We know that workers are often the last in line, and with what we're experiencing today, this will become an emergency. Are you working on those issues? The Labor Department is not responsible for protecting pension funds. Any work in that area would fall under the labor program. I understand your answer, but we can't work in silos because we're dealing here with the rights of workers. So yes, other departments will be delving into these issues, but the Labor Department should have the final responsibility with regard to ensuring that there is protection for workers in these matters. I understand, and that's why I was trying to discuss the program that we administer that does offer a supplement for employees who did not receive their salary, who didn't receive their payment when their employer shut down because of bankruptcy. And we'll be able to provide more information to you through my colleague. As Chantal said, we don't have any responsibility with regard to what happens after one's job has ceased to exist. We deal with what happens during employment. There are other departments that have responsibilities in these areas. There's the Canada Pension Fund, and there are other organizations involved for other aspects relating to pensions. There are organizations that do offer supplementary pension benefits, but that doesn't fall under our responsibility. Thank you, Ms. Chabot, and thank you to Mr. Robertson.
NDP for 6 minutes, and I understand Mr. Duval is going to pose the questions. If that's the case, Mr. Duval, perhaps we can check your mic first. You need to unmute it.
Mr. Chair. Yes, hi, Mr. Chair. I think Mr. Duval will come on at the next with the minister. Instead of spending time checking right now, we can just sort of kick in.
The floor is yours, Ms. Kwan, for 6 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to first raise this point. When the officials say that it is the employer who knows best in terms of workplace safety, I would argue that it is the employee who knows best, because they are the people who's going to be put at risk in this situation. So from that perspective, when people ask for personal protective equipment, I think that they should be provided that equipment. So case in point, I want to raise a situation. I got an email from a worker in Quebec, and the worker actually works in a different sector, and because Quebec has a mandatory redeployment policy, all these workers are being redeployed to another area to which is deemed to be mandatory, and they are not trained or ill-equipped, and people are very stressed in that situation. And they feel that if they do not abide by that mandatory redeployment requirement, that they would actually lose their jobs and that they would be fired. And so this is a very lengthy email that I got from someone who's in that situation right now. The individual also further explained by way of copies of emails that's been exchanged between the worker and the employer, basically saying that on the issue around protective equipment, personal protective equipment, and so on, it not being available, and basically the response is say, "Good luck. This is what you've got to do." So I like to get a response from the officials on that. How do people deal with those kinds of situations? And if you're put in an environment where you feel that it's not safe, you're ill-equipped to do that work, and you are forced to quit because you're made to do it otherwise, what will happen to them? Because if you voluntarily leave your job, you would not be qualified for CERB or government assistance.
So thank you very much for the question, actually. Can you hear me?
I can barely hear you.
Okay. So I'll try to, is this a bit better?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So thank you for the question, because it raises a lot of very, very important issue. And the first one I'll tackle is who knows best? And I will agree with you, partly, like the employer and the employees together knows best. What I will say is that the employer has more tools to address the issue, but the employees, the employee representative, have a key role in defining, in identifying the risks and defining the solutions. And so that's a fundamental aspect of occupational health and safety, is that both sides have to work together to find solution. I do want to come back to the PPE too, and I'll turn to Gary again, but just want to say something is that in a workplace, people have to work through the risks and identify how to mitigate the risks. It may be that in some cases, people do need PPE and PPE are required, but there are often other measures that are also essential to need place. And we know a lot about social distancing. We see these plexiglass barriers that protect. And so depending on the workplace, it's a combination of changing the work process, some equipment, potentially some PPE, and all of that lead to a solution. The final thing that we should address too, I think, in your question is the fear of reprisal, and the fact that people may feel that they could lose their job or that they have to work in dangerous situation, and there are provision in the code to prevent that. So I'll turn to Gary to give more detail. Our answer will pertain to the federally regulated sector, so that's our scope, but most provinces have very, very similar legislation. So Gary?
Yeah, no, thank you. I'd like to reinforce the internal responsibility system that our code is based on requires the involvement both of the employers and the employees. And the objective is for them to collaboratively identify all the risks. So in this case, a biological risk, to eliminate the risk if it's possible to do so. And if it's not, to minimize the risk to the degree possible. And then to Chantel's point on PPE, and this may go to an earlier question received in the committee, certainly if PPE is a requirement to help minimize the risk, it may or may not be, but if it is, the employer is to provide it, and the employees are to receive training and in many cases fit testing to make sure that it works for them in their circumstance. And in the event that it is required and it's not provided, employees have every right in the federal jurisdiction to refuse to work, to try to resolve it internally within their organization. And if it's not possible to do so, to escalate the response or the concern to us, and we would investigate. I hope that's helpful.
Well, thank you. I will endeavor to pass that information on to the individual, and perhaps they can be directly in contact with your ministry to resolve the situation. It sounds to me is quite a serious situation, and it's not just one worker, it's a group of workers as well. In their situation, their collective agreement has been suspended. So that means that their protection per the collective agreement would not apply. And so this is very concerning on the many levels, and hopefully this can be resolved. And I also want to emphasize and stress the importance of this, and if this could be passed on to the other ministry departments, and that is that for people who feel that they have to voluntarily leave their work for these reasons, that they would be qualified for CERB. I think that's really important for people to have that assurance. On a different note, and I wonder whether or not this is the right place to bring their concern, I have received yet another email from another constituent, and in that situation, the individual are being asked to collude with the employer to misrepresent the situation for the purposes.
Kwan, I'm sorry that's your time. Hopefully you'll get a chance to pose that question directly to the minister in the next round. Folks, we are we are ready now for Minister Tassi. Would like to do a mic check. I would like to suspend, and then we'll bring the minister back and restart the question. So we'll suspend for 5 minutes.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, before we do.
Session, and pleased to welcome the Honourable Philomena Tassi, Minister of Labour. Minister, you have 10 minutes for your opening remarks, and you have the floor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, it's a pleasure to be with you here today, virtually, to talk about an update on the measures taken by the government to address the COVID-19 pandemic as they pertain to my portfolio. Il me fait grand plaisir.
I am delighted to be with you today.
that today is International Workers' Day. Today, we recognize the millions of Canadians who go to work every day, and we're reminded of their health and safety at work and how important their health and safety is. So this is true now more than ever in the midst of a COVID-19 pandemic. I'd like to thank the committee for its study on the government's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Your work is essential to our democratic process, and I know the value of the work that you do. In fact, HUMA was the committee that I sat on.
I would like to begin by summarizing the support measures that the government has taken for workers, more specifically essential workers. A certain number of exceptional but necessary measures were taken in order to protect and to support businesses and Canadian workers during this crisis.
Canada have had to dramatically alter or shut down their operations in an effort to help flatten the curve. And this has had an enormous impact on employers, and workers alike. To help Canadian workers impacted by COVID-19 put food on the table and keep a roof over their head, the government introduced the Canada Emergency Response Benefit. And I'm aware of the fact that my colleague, the Honourable Carla Qualtrough, Minister of Employment, Workforce Development and Disability Inclusion, has already appeared in front of the committee to discuss this benefit. To ensure workers can take time off work to deal with situations related to COVID-19, such as school closures and self-quarantine, we've also created a new leave under the Canada Labour Code. And we are waiving the medical certificate requirements to make it easier for federally regulated workers to access existing leave benefits. While the new leave is unpaid, workers taking it may be eligible to access the Canada Emergency Response Benefit. My colleague, the Honourable Bill Morneau, Minister of Finance, has been leading work on the work being done to provide extra income support to our essential workers during this very critical time if they're earning less than $2,500 a month. These are people on the front line in hospitals and nursing homes, those ensuring the integrity of food supply or providing essential retail services to Canadians. They all play a vital role in providing essential services to Canadians. Their work is essential to our country's well-being, and on behalf of all Canadians, I'd like to thank them for the very important work that they do. Now I'd like to say a few words about what we've done with leaders in government, labor, and industry regarding the support for workers and employers during the COVID-19 crisis.
I am in constant communication with organizations, unions, and management organizations in all sectors in order that the government be kept aware of developments on the ground.
And territorial labor ministers to coordinate efforts across government to make sure that workplaces for essential workers remain safe during the COVID-19 crisis. We also recently met via teleconference with representatives from labor and employers to discuss the steps we've taken so far to ensure that workplaces are safe, workers are protected, and businesses in the Canadian economy are as strong as they can be. This meeting resulted in a joint statement underlying the need for collaboration on the part of labor, industry, and government to make sure that workplaces remain safe for Canadians, for Canada's essential workers. We agreed that the situation continues to evolve and we must remain flexible and adaptable in how we respond. And above all, we must continue to work together. Working together will yield better results because we can share common goals to protect the health, safety, and well-being of Canadian workers. We are also collaborating so that Canadian businesses are ready to come back and ensure the economy can recover by getting people back to work safely after the crisis ends. We're going to continue to work together to achieve these goals today and down the road. Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Chairman, allow me now to talk to you about the measures the government is taking to protect the health and safety of all Canadians. Based on the Canada Labour Code, employers have a duty to protect the health and safety of their employees in the workplace.
Health and safety committees, employers are required to update and create their own hazard prevention programs, including measures to ensure employees are not exposed to conditions that would be harmful to their health and safety while working. We know that exposure to COVID-19 is a new phenomenon. We also know we must take this matter very seriously. We encourage employers to seek guidance from appropriate authorities, including the Public Health Agency of Canada and the World Health Organization, for information on preventative measures that should be taken. The Canadian Centre for Occupational Health and Safety, under the direction of its CEO, Anne Tenier, has been doing excellent work in response to the COVID-19 crisis. They have very rapidly developed a series of pandemic guidance tip sheets and made them available for free on their website. These pandemic tip sheets offer guidance and good practices for specific occupations, industries, and services for both employees and employers. The CCOHS has also provided an online space, and it's called Pandemic Info Share. This enables businesses and organizations to share their pandemic-related good practices and resources. Mr. Chair, we know that employers are following guidance and measures from the appropriate authorities, including the Public Health Agency of Canada, to make sure that their employees are safe during this critical time. We also know that most employers are doing their best to accommodate reasonable requests from employees who are grappling with the wide-ranging disruptions caused by COVID-19, and I want to thank them for their efforts. For example, there are many workers who have to stay at home and care for their children who are out of school. In some cases, they are able to complete some or all of their work from home. That being said, I know that there are many employees who are nervous about heading back to work every day or about restarting work. This is why we've reached out to employers and their representatives to remind them of the employer's responsibility under the code. If there is a risk of exposure to COVID-19, employers have an obligation to identify, assess the risk, and implement proper controls through their hazard prevention programs. Employees subject to Part 2 of the Code have the right to refuse work where they have a reasonable basis to believe that their duties present a danger to health and safety. Every workplace and every situation is unique, and when a refusal to work cannot be resolved internally, the labor program will investigate. Mr. Chair, we're committed to supporting and protecting workers and businesses. As I mentioned, the government has taken a number of unprecedented but necessary steps to support Canadian workers and businesses during this COVID-19 outbreak. As we will continue to monitor the ongoing and continuously evolving situation, we will remain open to exploring additional measures that could further help workers during this time. That means continuing to work with leaders from labor, industry, and other stakeholders to ensure that we have in place right now is what we have in place is working, and of course, to be corrected if we need to. We're committed to ensuring that workers and businesses have the protections and support they need while keeping essential goods and services flowing to Canadians. With that, Mr. Chair, I conclude my preliminary remarks. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Minister. We'll now begin with questions, starting with the Conservatives. Mr. Doherty, please, for 6 minutes.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and thanks to the Minister. Minister, it's been fairly frustrating. I'm not sure if you've been on this call for the last 2 hours, but it's been fairly frustrating that your own employees, your own team has got incredible challenges with connectivity. I would ask that perhaps some attention by your office to ensure that your own employees have the tools to be able to provide these updates and all parliamentarians the appropriate information. You can see the frustration on your employees' faces. Minister, are you aware of the letter written by CUPE to you and Minister Garneau on April 6, 2020? Yes or no?
So first, let me say with respect to the workers, MP Doherty, look, everybody is working very hard in these very challenging times.
I understand that.
They are going above and beyond. And I think that what has been accomplished has been excellent.
Right.
So,
okay.
But I will take your note with respect to the importance of ensuring that, you know, that we have the systems in place in order that we can have these meetings.
Right. So yes or no, are you aware with the letter?
I believe I am aware of the correspondence that was written. Let me say that we are getting correspondence in on a regular basis, and my team is working.
Minister, my time is very short. So wherever possible, not out of the lack of disrespect or respect, you're aware. So are you aware of the substance and the contents of that letter? Again, yes or no?
If you can, we're getting correspondence in every day, right? Volumes of correspondence is coming in. I'm not specifically sure with respect to which letter we've received a number of letters.
So the letter came from QP and asked you to step in, do your job, and provide flight attendants with PPE so they could do their job safely. Do you remember? Does that remind you now about the contents of the letter?
So there are different letters, and I will say that most of the letters that we have received in my portfolio relate specifically to the PPE. Yes.
So did you respond to that letter to QP?
So that is in process. We are now working through responding to the various pieces of correspondence that we have received.
Okay.
And so my team is working very hard to respond to the volumes of correspondence that are coming in.
Minister, since March 15th, over 300 flights in Canada have had confirmed cases of COVID, resulting in at least 60 confirmed cases of COVID with our flight attendants. On March 11th, the government asked airlines and airports to become the front line of the COVID battle, tasking our airport employees as well as our airline employees to be the front line in defense. Did your office at any time provide any training or PPE to any of those organizations?
So what I would say in response to that is that our government is very much aware of the PPE that is needed. And we are working very hard with procurement in order to secure as much PPE as we possibly can.
So that'd be a no, though.
In regards to working with the various sectors, I'm working with Minister Garneau on this particular file, and I want to add that we are working collaboratively with each of the sectors.
I get that, Minister.
In order that the materials can be provided.
Okay, Minister, I'm just going to be very, very blunt and very clear. But your mandate letter states that you will work with and require federally regulated employers to take preventative steps to address workplace stress and injury. Would you not say that this is we're in some unprecedented times, and that every measure should be taken to provide employees when they raise an issue, and employers when they raise an issue to step in?
Absolutely. And I know, MP Doherty, that Minister Garneau has been working very closely with the airline sector.
But this is your issue.
I would raise. No, actually, he's the lead minister with respect to transport. He has, in fact, we have implemented a number of measures to help keep those workers safe, like now the recently guidance that was said with respect to ensuring that those that are traveling by air wear masks. The other issue that I would raise is that in the Canada Labour Code,
Minister, do you take responsibility for any of our flight attendants and our flight crews that have come down sick because they've asked for help and you've failed to provide any help and failed to actually even answer the letters, the correspondence?
I wouldn't agree with that. So I would say, first and foremost, we're responding to letters. Secondly, with respect to the PPE and air transit, and with air transit, I know Minister Garneau and I have been working very closely with respect to identifying what PPE is needed. And under the Canada Labour Code, there is a provision. Any federally regulated worker who feels that they are in a dangerous work environment has the right to make that claim, and there have been some claims, and processes have been put in place. But your office
has refused to answer their concerns. You've just stated earlier on that you still haven't responded to their labor organization. Your employee earlier on, one of your deputy ministers earlier on, said that you have a tripartite approach. You work with the employer, the employee reps, and yourself, and you try to find solutions, but you've just stated that you have yet to respond from an April 6th letter. Now, our airline and our airport staff have been on the front lines fighting COVID since early in March, and yet they still have not had any training, and they still have not had any PPE.
No, I disagree with that. Sorry, Scott, Todd, but I disagree with that statement. We have been in collaboration with, and I have been in regular engagement with union leaders, labor, businesses, in order to come to a point where we can work collaboratively. And I'm happy to say employers know they have the responsibility in order to provide that equipment.
But you have the responsibility that they're doing that.
Doherty, that's your time. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I just want to ask one last thing. Minister, would you table with this committee any of the documents to those labor organizations?
That is your time. Thank you. Next, we have Ms. Young for 6 minutes, please.
A point of order. Chair, I have a point of order as well.
Yes, Mr. Turnbull.
Yeah, point of order. I believe that ministers are supposed to be allowed to answer the questions when they're asked a question, and I found, all due respect to Mr. Doherty, that he kept interrupting the minister as she's trying to answer the question that he asked. I don't think that's, how committee business should be conducted. I would ask for you to rule on that, please.
Point of order.
Thank you, Mr. Turnbull.
I had a point of order too.
Yeah. Okay. So on this point of order, what I can say to you is that it is a challenge in order to ensure fairness to the witness and to the person asking the question. The person asking the question has limited time, and it's fair for them to hold the minister to an answer. But there is a fine line between badgering and ensuring that the time is adequately used. I'm doing my best to find that balance.
Point of order.
We have another point of order. Who's that from?
It's Adam Vaughan.
Mr. Vaughan, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, in the first round, we're supposed to try to figure out how to make the questions move equally amongst all committee members, as this is a parliamentary committee, and it's not question period. And as a result, and I'm contributing to it now with this point of order, with all these points of orders, the distribution of questions has not been fair to parliamentarians. We all have to represent our constituencies and the organizations in our ridings. And these points of orders have effectively cut off several questions for opposition members. And I know the Green Party, which is asking for time, will never get time under these circumstances. I don't think it's a point of order that's quite often being raised. I think it's a filibuster tactic, quite frankly, and I find it very offensive to the privileges of members of committee. We know we only have 2 hours, and I think that this is a delay tactic, quite frankly, and they're used to run the clock. And I'd like that to be considered as points of orders are raised, because I think it's becoming quite obvious what's happening here. In addition to that, as a point of privilege, I think I think that talking over people, we know the translation is difficult, but when people talk over and try to interrupt each other, it is equally impossible to listen in this format, and makes the situation even worse. We have a responsibility to listen to each other as much as we have a responsibility to talk. And I think that when that talking over happens, the time should be taken away from the next opposition member on the same side down the line, because it's an offense to all of us.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Nonsense.
Is it Mr. Doherty on a point of order?
Yeah, it is, Mr. Chair. I will bring our colleague back to the previous round where it was the point of orders were not frivolous. They were due to connectivity issues, and that members on this committee could not hear the witnesses speak. As to our line of questioning with the minister, the chair was absolutely correct. Once the floor is ceded to a member, it is their time, and the minister or guests are asked or should be asked to keep their answers as succinct as possible. We know in the past that answers can be very long-winded. Wherever possible, we ask that, and I did at the outset of my questioning, that a simple yes, wherever possible, where a yes or no answer can be given, please give that.
Thank you, Mr. Doherty. Ms. Young, you have the floor for 6 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and Minister Tassi. Thank you for joining us today. This is such an important issue. This past Tuesday was the National Day of Mourning for workers who have been injured or lost their job. During this pandemic, so many Canadians are working on the front lines, whether it's healthcare workers, grocery store clerks, truck drivers. They are all putting themselves in harm's way so that Canadians can survive this crisis. Minister, the importance of protecting Canadian workers is of paramount importance to everyone, and that's obvious today. There have been a number of concerns raised about how workers can protect themselves and what the government should be doing to ensure their safety. And as you mentioned in your opening remarks, that you are taking additional measures as we start to reopen our economy. And I'd like to hear about those additional measures, what you're thinking of that we'll have to navigate over the next few weeks and months. Thank you.
Well, thanks, MP Young, and I'm very happy that you made reference to the day of mourning. And I think that for that first day that we had our first session, that the speaker began with that acknowledgement was really important and very good to see. And for us as members of Parliament to take time to acknowledge those who have suffered injuries or loss as a result of workplace situations. With respect to protecting workers, there's no question. Like I think first and foremost, it's really important to talk about the collaborative piece. Collaboration on this file is extremely important. And so what I have done right from the beginning is to reach out to all my provincial and territorial partners. I had individual calls with those partners, and then subsequent to that convened an FPT meeting where we gathered together to talk about issues. In that meeting, I brought to the table the Centre for Occupational Health and Safety, the Canadian Centre for Occupational Health and Safety. And that was really important because from across the provinces and territories, there was this issue about wanting evidence and standards or tips in order to provide workers with what they need to keep them safe on the front lines. So that meeting was very helpful. And as a result of that, now the Canadian Centre for Occupational Health and Safety has actually created sector-specific tips. The evidence-based approach on the PPE is critical because we want to ensure that we're using the PPE to the best way that we can. These sector-specific tips, which are based as well on Public Health Agency of Canada's guidelines, are giving employees the protection that they need or the recommended protection they need in order to carry on safely. In addition to that, so that was very important. In addition to that, the Minister of Procurement has committed to $2 billion to purchasing PPE so that PPE can get to places that it needs to be distributed. And so we're working with the provinces and territories on that. In addition to this, the Minister of Innovation has started this Plan to Immobilize Industry launch. And here it's about companies stepping up that have expertise and that are able to assist in this regard. And I think this is so important. In my own writing, I have had companies that have come forward that were making, for example, sports apparel that now want to make gowns. And that's happening across the country, which is fantastic. 2,900 conversations have been instituted as a result of that. And with the option of trying to get Canadian products, 22,000 companies have come forward, submissions have been made with respect to getting that product available. In addition to that, as I've said in my introductory remarks, we did institute an unpaid leave, and that was about ensuring that federally regulated workers who take time off because of COVID-19 don't lose their jobs, and waiving the medical certificate requirement. So making it easier in these very challenging times. Those are some of the initiatives.
Thank you very much. That is very important. I also wanted to talk to you, and I know that this is an interest to you. You're a vocal advocate for mental health in the workplace. In the current climate, Canadians are facing unimaginable pressure, be it personally, professionally, or financially. And these stresses are going to linger long after a recovery has begun and the new normal has begun. What work has the government and your department undertaken or are planning to take in order to address the mental health concerns of workers in all sectors?
So I'm really happy that you raised this question, because as I engage with both labor and industry, mental health is something that comes up repeatedly. We know that workers are facing great anxiety and pressure, and we want to be able to respond. In terms of my own work, 20 years as a high school chaplain, I have come to recognize the difference that a little bit of mental health support can provide. And so it's critical that we move forward on this and provide these extra supports. There are resources out there that are excellent. The Mental Health Commission of Canada has a resource. You can go online and access that. And then just recently, Health Canada has launched a Wellness Together portal. This is a fantastic portal, and I would encourage each and everyone on this call to spread the information about this portal. It's a fantastic source. It goes from being able to do a self-assessment right to the point of being able to speak to somebody. And so this is something that I have heard that there was a great need for. I know that the labor program is sharing this, and this is a real step forward, responding to a legitimate need that exists amongst our workers.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you, Ms. Young. Maintenant, nous avons.
We will now hear Ms. Chabot for 6 minutes, please. Yes, welcome, Minister. Thank you for your participation. To begin with, I would like to say the following. I know that as Labour Minister, you are very...
Sorry.
Okay.
Is there something I should be doing here that I haven't?
All right.
Is everyone else getting translation?
Thank you, Minister. Can we hear from the
switch to English?
Okay.
Switch to English, Minister.
On the bottom of your screen.
Oh, interpretation, right. Okay.
Yep.
I've been through this before. You think I would. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay. Sorry.
Madame Chabot,
Madame Chabot, please resume. So I can begin again? Yes, you have the floor. Minister, thank you for your work. And I wanted to state at the outset that I have witnessed your work since your arrival in this portfolio. You have done important work with your colleagues and with our colleagues in Quebec in the area of labor. What we're experiencing is very concerning. We're talking about all of the adjustments that have been made, what has been done to establish programs and new practices given the crisis that began on March 13th. I wanted to talk to you about the concerns of two categories of workers. There might be more of them, but these are two categories that are of concern to me. First of all, tourism. The tourism industry, in the context of this crisis, risks being or will be a sector that will be very deeply affected during the crisis and most probably afterwards. Just in Quebec, and I imagine that throughout the country it's an awful lot of jobs, just in Quebec it's 400,000 jobs. And I've had discussions with stakeholders in this industry, and you as well, and you must know that revenue sources for tourism stakeholders are limited to a very short period of time. People are afraid that the economy will restart too late for them, so the tourism industry has various requests. Might it be possible to consider that the 75% salary subsidy might be extended over a longer period of time? Might we consider that workers in this industry that is seasonal might be considered as regular workers over the course of a full year? These are issues of concern to me. I would like to know what your views are on this. I know that the finance industry, or rather the finance department is also involved, but I'd like to know what your department is doing in this area. And secondly, well, I'll come back to my second question after your response. Thank you for that question, Ms. Chabot.
So I would say that from the beginning, and I also want to say thanks for your kind words and for the level of collaboration that you have demonstrated. I know that we have had a meeting and you've been very gracious with your time in terms of providing me with input as we move forward, and I deeply appreciate that. So this is another example of that. I take your points with respect to tourism. I would say this. So you know that my portfolio, the focus is on health and safety of workers. But having said that, I work across my departments and ministries in order to ensure that when we recover from this, the best recovery is possible. The measures that the government has put in place have been all about ensuring that, first of all, protecting those that are most vulnerable that need help immediately. And secondly, trying to continue the collaborative relationship or the relationship that exists between employer and employee, so that all these after COVID-19, when we're in the recovery stage, that those relationships can continue. So that means providing supports like the wage subsidy, like CERB, like rental relief. All these measures are about when we hit that recovery stage to ensure that workers and employers can continue and recover quickly, because we want a strong recovery from this. And I want you to know that I've heard your concerns in the tourism industry. In my conversations, I've heard those concerns and appreciate that input.
Thank you. These tourism sector workers regularly put questions to me. We know that they were eligible for CERB, but they were in a black hole with regard to EI. So they're very worried. They don't know how they'll be able to qualify for a new EI period, and we would like to know if this is a matter that is going to be resolved. Will they requalify for a new employment insurance period? And I have another question as well, one that I put to the officials, the representatives of the department who appeared earlier with regard to pension funds. I asked them what the situation was going to be. Some employees are going to come out of this in good stead. Some businesses are going to go bankrupt. The concern for workers is their pension funds. This morning, we were seeing reports in newspapers about this, and what we want is some assurance from the federal government. So how are you cooperating with finance, the Department of Finance, in this area to ensure that pension funds will be protected and considered to be a priority in cases of bankruptcy or insolvency?
Okay, so thank you for that question. In terms of a follow-up on whether there's going to be requalification, I will say this is an evolving situation. You've seen the measures that our government has implemented. We continue to respond to the situation as it evolves in order to protect workers, and we want, of course, to give a restart to all those companies. Tourism is a big sector, so we will continue to look at this situation. I appreciate your concern with respect to the pension funds. You know that in my previous ministry as Minister of Seniors, this is something that was very important to me. And I will say that we will continue to work across ministries in order to do the best we can to protect seniors. Some of the initiatives that we implemented as a government were very important. For example, the OAS and the GIS rolling back the age of eligibility, that gave seniors 2 years of extra funds that they would receive, the $100 million into the New Horizons for Seniors programs. These are all programs that support seniors, but I hear very clearly what you are saying, and I want you to say that I want to let you know that we absolutely want to protect seniors.
Thank you, Minister. Next, we have the New Democrats. Is it Mr. Duval?
Yes, Mr. Chair, can you hear me?
I sure can. You have 6 minutes, sir. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Minister. I appreciate you being here. And I hope that you and your family are safe. A couple issues that you mentioned that I want to touch on is the Canadian emergency wage study. Some employers have been want to apply and have gone to their workforce, but they're threatening the unions that if they do not allow them to open up their contracts and abusing their seniority rights and work schedules, then they will not apply. Are you aware of this? And is this one of the criteria that is being allowed, or is any action being taken?
So, Scott, thanks for your good wishes at the beginning. I should say MP Duvall and Hamilton, I think we have a relationship here. So, so just to clarify I'm not fully understanding your question. So you're saying that they're applying for CERB, but they're not getting CERB, or are you talking about the sub agreements?
The supplementary, the wage supplement.
Yeah.
Okay. So companies are saying that they want to apply, but the condition is to the unions that if you don't allow us to open up your basic agreement, we will not apply. Are you aware of that?
No, that matter. Now, that matter has not been brought to my attention, but having said that, it may have been to the attention of finance or the employment minister, because for me, as you know, the focus is health and safety. And with respect to the Minister of Employment, it's CERB, and with respect to the wage subsidy, it would be finance and business.
Okay, and I'm just bringing that to your attention.
Yeah. Okay. Minister, very good. And I'll follow up with you on that,
because it is a labor problem that collective agreements should be abided by. Yeah. The next one I want to just touch on, where our last speaker from the block did, is the many financial advisors, and it's been given out as warnings that after this recovery stage, if we ever get out of it, that many companies will go bankrupt. And we've already had some financial advisors in the media warning people and companies the easiest way is to file for bankruptcy to get to help them stay afloat. Are you aware? Are we taking any action to protect workers, knowing that there could be a spike in all these bankruptcies coming forward to get out of their debt, which would leave workers behind as the legislation is written, not only on pensions but on severance payments, on termination payments, on vacation pay. So most of the people who are in EI now will have run out. So if these companies do go bankrupt and claim bankruptcies, what are we doing to support the workers? Are we looking at it to change the legislation on bankruptcy protection and put workers first? Because we know this is going to happen.
Okay, so thanks, MP Duvall, for that important question. And I would say that this is a situation that is evolving continuously. And what we have done as a government is we've put in place measures that were targeted, and they were measures that, for example, CERB was for those individuals and families that went from a paycheck to nothing, that they needed to put food on their table, they needed to pay the rent. So that's what we have done. As we move through the process, in terms of protecting, we are continuously looking at anyone that falls through the cracks, individuals that need more assistance. On the point you're raising, I would say that the measures that we have implemented have been very specific with the intention of trying to help companies survive this. So when recovery comes, they can recover. That's why the implementation of the wage subsidy, because now we want companies to get through this. The federal government is providing 75% of wages to employees. And the reason we're doing this is because we want that company to be able to get through this difficult time. And the other measures that we've taken with respect to, as I've said, rental supports and liquidity and loans for small businesses, where they can, borrow up to $40,000 and have 25% of that $10,000 forgiven. All of these initiatives are about tackling the very thing you're talking about, which is trying to keep businesses going, so that those workers will have work, and those people that have dedicated so much of their effort into creating a business are going to be supported in the recovery stage to get that business to come back.
Well, Minister, what I'm saying, though, is we know there's going to be a spike in business. What is the government having any plans to start protecting workers, not so much as the business to keep them afloat, but if they're not keeping them afloat and they can't be afloat, what are they doing to protect the workers going into a second stage of harmful hurt? This is very serious. Will you advocate for putting workers on top on the bankruptcy protection?
Okay, so Scott, I know this is something that you have advocated for a long time, and you and I have had many conversations about this, and I appreciate those conversations. And so this is what I would say. You and I are on the same page in terms of protecting the worker. We want to ensure at the end of the day that workers who have committed years of service are protected. Having said that, we know that with respect to the super priority, which is something you've advocated, that I have concerns about that particular approach. However, there's been a commitment that I have made to you that we are going to continue to work on this. And in fact, in the last budget, there was money set aside that we would continue to work on this. This is in addition to this pandemic that we've hit now. And I look forward to continuing to working with you on this matter. It's not specifically my portfolio, but as you know, it's a matter that's very important to me.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you, Mr. Duval. Next, we have the second round. Ms. Jansen, for 5 minutes, please.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Tazzi. I appreciate you being here. I have a question in regards to seniors' homes and healthcare workers. So reports have shown that around 79% of deaths from COVID-19 have been in senior homes living in long-term care facilities. Here in BC, healthcare workers regularly move between facilities, and just down the road from me is a senior care facility that felt compelled to ban those healthcare workers from that were being sent to their location, in part because the local health authority had only assigned 2 face masks and 2 sets of gloves for the month. Clearly, this sort of PPE rationing is dangerous not only for patients, but also for care workers. Do you feel that this rationing of PPE for caregivers is an acceptable practice, yes or no?
So let me say that, as you can appreciate, this is a provincial jurisdiction with respect to long-term care facilities and how
I'm talking about the PPE.
Managed.
Sorry.
Yes.
PPE.
So on the PPE side, the federal government has committed $2 billion, which they are purchasing, and they are going to distribute that PPE among the provinces and territories in healthcare and long-term care in order to provide those workers with the supports that they need.
So it's not acceptable to ration PPE then?
So at this stage, what we are doing is that we are amassing as much personal protective equipment as we possibly can in order to reach the needs that are there. And I know
yes, I do understand that Ms. Thornton, who was in charge of the PPE stockpile, was not even sure of how many PPE were in the stockpile at the beginning of this pandemic. So I'm wondering, just considering the shortages that we've been having across Canada for healthcare workers, which obviously puts them in serious danger, what grade would you give PHAC on pandemic preparedness?
So I would say that in response to the issues that have been raised with me, there's a couple of things. First is we need the evidence to know what PPE is needed. And I think PHAC has been very good with that, giving guidance as to, okay, this is what is needed in order for protection. And then secondly, with respect to this, our government understands we want those frontline workers protected. Absolutely. Which is why not only did we invest the $2 billion in order to get that PPE to protect those workers, in addition to that, we've introduced this mobilization front where companies are coming forward and providing PPE.
Yes, I was noticing that here in my riding. What they're doing is they're asking businesses to come forward with their PPE because there was nothing in the stockpile. I'm just wondering, in regards to this, the labor standards, do you think that the federal government needs to adjust their labor standards and requirements for those working in long-term care facilities during a pandemic, just to ensure the protection of both their workers and those living in long-term care facilities? Yes or no?
So in terms of the long-term care, those work refusals or workplace safety is governed by provincial laws and legislation. On the federal federal level, we have the Canada Labour Code, and that applies to all federally regulated workers. If a worker goes into a situation and says this workplace isn't safe, they have a process that they can undertake in order to ensure that they are never forced to work in a dangerous work site.
So considering the fact that most of the deaths are happening in the senior care facilities, you're putting that then only on the province. You have no role to play in the safety PPE of those workers.
No, I wouldn't say that. I would say a couple of things. First, the Public Health Agency of Canada has actually issued a guidelines with respect to standards, and the premiers of each of the provinces and territories have, in my mind, accepted those. So I think that that's a fantastic start federally, where they're showing leadership and saying, listen, this is what we need to do. And then in addition to that, we have, as a federal government, $2 billion. And also, it's not the point you made is, and I can appreciate that because we have the same thing happening in my community where people that have PPE and are able to offer it do, but it's more than that. It's saying to companies, can you retool? Can you do something a little different in order to create that? So there
and I know Medicom, they mentioned Medicom in one of the committee meetings. They're going to be retooling at I don't know what cost to Canadian taxpayers, when in actual fact, they upped their production of masks in their US and French facilities already back in February the 7th without any extra dollars. So we hear a lot of talk about, Canadian companies retooling, but basically we're giving them money and they won't even be able to start making those masks until I think in June was the information that we had. So just really worried about that stockpile not really been properly cared for, and wondering, again, what grade would you give PHAC on their pandemic preparedness?
I would say that
Minister, we're out of time, so if you could keep this very short, go ahead.
Okay, the stockpile issue is a different issue. This pandemic is something where we have to go way above and beyond. And what I would say in this is that we need to work together in innovative ways. And I think our government is showing strong leadership in this regard. The Minister of Innovation has taken unprecedented steps. And I want to thank Canadians, and I've seen it in my own riding, who are stepping forward, who are making changes to their companies on their own dime, and then retooling to provide the PPE. Yes, the government will buy that PPE from them if they are reach the standards and satisfy the Health Canada's standards that are set. But Canadians are responding in an absolutely stellar way to this, and I want to assure you, this is all hands on deck. We are doing everything we possibly can to ensure that every worker has the PPE that they need.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you, Ms. Jansen. Next, we have Mr. Long for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon from St. John to all of my friends and colleagues. And Minister Tassi, it's certainly great to see you. And as you alluded to earlier, we did do a lot of great work on HUMA in our first term as MPs. I mean, we did the poverty reduction study, we did the temporary foreign workers study, and a lot of significant studies that certainly had a strong and meaningful impact on Canadians' lives. So I wanted to ask you a question, Minister, about essential workers, and certainly what we've seen over the last couple months has opened my eyes, raised my awareness, and certainly my appreciation of frontline essential workers and the serious role that they play, the essential role in our economy. They're not just healthcare workers. They're grocery store clerks. They're security people that are in the mall that my office is in. They're taxi drivers, pharmacists, takeout people, hardware store workers, truck drivers.
Yeah.
These workers are out there every day, putting themselves in danger at times to ensure that Canadians are fed, get supplies, and that we're taken care of. I believe it's important to acknowledge the important work that these essential workers, these great Canadians are doing, and how they're contributing to our society and our country. So, Minister, can you please elaborate on the federal government's plan to recognize these amazing workers for their work on the front lines of the battle against COVID-19?
So MP Long, thanks for that question. And I think it's very important that we take a moment to recognize the times we're in and to the dedication and commitment of workers across this country. And I know that there are workers that have gone into this and assumed roles where there might be some level of risk. I think of healthcare workers, but the pandemic has raised this to a whole other level. And then we have other workers, some of which you've mentioned, whether they're, the truck drivers or stocking shelves at the local grocery store or checking us out so that we can put food on our table, who now have this risk. And we want to show them that we appreciate what they are doing and that we want to support them. So these are absolutely, unprecedented times, and we wanted to, as a federal government, demonstrate the support and the gratitude and appreciation we have. So the federal government has announced that we will be working with provinces and territories to provide a top-up of salaries for various essential service workers. And this is something that is, again, very collaborative. It's going to be a collaborative approach. It's going to be worked out with each of the provinces and territories. I know Ontario and Quebec, I think, sort of have a framework. I don't know that it's actually been finalized. But the idea here is that we want to recognize the heroic work. I'm very happy that you've asked the question. In addition to this, what we are doing is, with the emergency response benefit, we know a number of workers. I think of, for example, some students that are working at the local grocery store that are working part-time. We've also allowed that these workers who earn $1,000 or less would also be able to collect the emergency response benefit. I think that this is really important, and particularly, workers too, PSWs that were working 3 positions now down to 1, they can still earn the $1,000 at their work and then still be eligible for the emergency response benefit. And the last thing I would say on this, and it relates to the point that MP Doherty brought up. It's about my conversations with stakeholders. I have to tell you that my time is spent in dialogue and in conversation across party lines with my PT partners, labor, industry, and I am getting input firsthand from these groups. And there was a real need to recognize the work that these frontline workers were doing.
Thank you very much, Minister. Just also 2 groups that I didn't mention were certainly, in a previous life, I used to work for a company called Canada Packers, and then aquaculture company Stolt Sea Farm, and certainly the frontline workers in our beef plants across the country and our seafood and fish processing plants also. Minister, also, just further to that, I know that the
sorry,
federal government...
Mr. Long, you're out of time. I'm sorry about that. Mr. Doherty is next for 5 minutes.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Minister, wouldn't you agree that the number one, following up with from Mr. Long's comments, wouldn't you agree that the number one thing that we can be doing as parliamentarians and as you, as the Minister of Labour, is to ensure that our frontline, our essential workers, those that are keeping us safe, keeping us informed, keeping us healthy, keeping our supply chain moving, our grocery store stocked, are working in safe and secure environments?
My focus, MP Doherty, on this has been about health and safety of all our workers.
So that you would be agreeing with me then?
So my main priority, and what I've heard in all of my conversations, has to do with 2 things. One is identifying what is needed. Okay. And secondly, doing the best that we possibly can in order to protect workers.
Minister, what have you done in terms of our federal prisons, our federal prison workers, and the health and safety of the both the correctional services guards as well as the let's say the guests that are staying in our federal prisons? 118 cases in the Mission Matsqui Federal Prison, over 300 cases nationwide, and the union is calling for assistance from the federal government. What have you done to assist that?
So, with respect to the situation with Mission, I know that Correctional Services Canada actually brought experts in. Minister Blair is the lead on that, but I'm aware of the situation. The experts were brought in, and changes were made in order to accommodate the issues that were identified by employees.
I'm trying really hard not to interrupt you. But Minister, where do you step in? Where does your mandate step in, and where do you do your job? The questions I've asked previously, you continually defer to other lead ministers, which I agree that there are other lead ministers on there, but when does your office and you step in to fulfill your mandate?
Well, let me say and assure you that I'm working with my colleagues on each of these issues. So the letter that you referred to, for example, with Minister Garneau, we are working together. With respect to public health and safety and corrections, I am working with Minister Blair. So the way I think that in answer to your question is, yes, we are working together to get the PPE and to help get those supports in place. But Minister, if it's a transport issue, that's their main, it's Transport Canada.
Okay.
And if it, now, in addition, so finally, let me say with the labor code is if, for example, a correctional services officer has an issue and says, I don't feel that this is a safe work site, and they have the ability to go through the Canada Labor Code and make that
Minister, claim. We are still talking about receiving PPE. We're over 8 weeks, maybe even 11 weeks into this process, and we still have not received the PPE. While we have Canadian operations that are trying to do their best to do that, we still haven't received enough PPE for our frontline workers, and we're still asking them to reuse, recycle. Minister, do you feel that that is a responsible way of handling a global crisis?
Well, I would say in response to that question, we are working extremely hard to assist all levels in order to get them the PPE.
I'm not disagreeing with you.
PPE is being provided to various sectors, and I am working with the Minister of Procurement because I have done assessments with respect to all the stakeholders that I have identified and what is the PPE that is required. So yes, there's scans of what PPE is required. FETCO, for example, has provided me with a list. Other union leaders have provided me with lists, and we then respond to what is needed.
Minister, have you worked on any of the issues that have been brought forward with respect to our truckers that are working in just incredible conditions, keeping our supply chain going? There's no washrooms available for them. They are not being provided with PPE along the routes. It's a well-publicized issue, and I'm asking you, have you done anything towards ensuring that our truckers, our long-haul truckers that are helping keep our stores stocked, that they are receiving the attention that they require?
Yeah, I'm very happy.
Please,
I'm happy that you've asked that question. So I would say this. So I have weekly calls with Monsieur Laporte, who's the Teamsters, the Trucking Association. I have regular calls as well in order to determine what the needs are. In terms of the rest stops, my team has made calls in order to assist, as Minister Garneau has made calls in order to assist in having certain rest stops along all highways open up so that truckers can have access to those rest stops. And together, as I mentioned previously, we did have a industry and labor meet, and a joint statement was issued with respect to how we are working collaboratively, sharing information. And I think that's really important because we have to know where the needs are so that we can best respond to those needs. So yes, we've done quite a bit in terms of this regard, and we're going to continue to work together in order to ensure that our truckers have the support that they need.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Mr. Doherty. Mr. Vaughan, for 5 minutes, please.
Thanks very much. Just to review some of the questions we're asked to get clear answers on them. The health guidelines, we heard about problems in British Columbia, about how British Columbia labor laws are being enforced or not enforced in old age homes or seniors care. That is an area of exclusive provincial jurisdiction.
It's exclusive jurisdiction. And in addition to that, though, the Public Health Agency of Canada has worked with the Minister of Health and the Minister of Seniors and provided guidelines suggested.
But those guidelines don't compel a provincial government to act in any particular way. They're just simply frameworks for use. And the secondary, that the allocation of masks in the healthcare system and in the seniors and also in the homeless shelters, those allocations are made by the provincial BC government.
Correct.
So they decide whether or not a hospital is prioritized over a senior's home, or a homeless shelter is prioritized over a senior's home, or a senior's home is in fact prioritized over a different provincial workplace.
Yes, MP Vaughan, and thanks for raising this. It's really about us working collaboratively. We as a federal government want to provide the support, but it's up to each of the provinces and territories to determine how that support is distributed. And we think that's important because they are in each of the communities. They know their communities better than anyone else.
And in terms of the issues that were raised around Quebec and overriding Quebec labor laws, or overriding Quebec collective agreements, or overriding public service agreements with the government of Quebec, we don't have federal authority to unilaterally override Quebec labor laws or override collective agreements or tell the Premier of Quebec how to assign public servants to which job. That is not an area of federal responsibility.
That's correct.
And in terms of airline workers, we're aware of 5 airline workers that have contracted COVID. We are aware that 200 are in isolation. Are we aware of how much of that is related to the repatriation of Canadians and the fact that they were coming from areas with high infections and we were working night and day to evacuate Canadians to safety? How many of those isolations are directly tied to rescuing Canadians and have nothing to do with masks? Because even if you had a mask, you'd still be in isolation. And the mask wouldn't prevent you from getting COVID. It may prevent you from spreading it.
Yeah. Well, MP Vaughan, that's an excellent question. I don't have those exact details, but the point you're making is well noted.
And the issue of stockpiles.
Mr. Vaughan, excuse me, we're going to need to adjourn because of the demands on the resources at the House. This will be your last question.
On the issue of PPEs, well, we set guidelines and we clearly have a federal stockpile to share and distribute with the provinces. The provinces also have a responsibility to maintain stockpiles as well.
Yeah, well, that's my understanding. And we are doing absolutely everything we can, even though that, it's provincial. This is a provincial jurisdiction matter. The federal government isn't quibbling about, okay, this is your jurisdiction. We are working very hard to get as much PPE as we possibly can and then providing it to our provincial and territorial partners.
Thank you.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you, Mr. Vaughan. We are now at the appointed hour, and as I indicated, there are significant demands on the House of Commons resources in order to keep the committees moving. So, Minister, thank you so much for your attendance. To my colleagues, thank you very much for this meeting, and we won't be apart very long. We'll see you on Monday. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Have a great weekend, everyone.